All right, good evening. This is the December 21st, 2022 Cottage Grove City Council meeting, which I'm calling to order. The first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance, so please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, will the clerk please do the roll?
Councilmember Kambata?
Here.
Councilmember Dennis?
Here.
Councilmember Thede?
Ho, ho, here.
Councilmember Olson?
Here.
Mayor Bailey?
There you go. Yes, here. Thank you. All right. Next on our agenda this evening is open forum. This is the opportunity for anybody that'd like to speak on something that's not on tonight's agenda is welcome to do so at this time. We did have a sign-up sheet out in the entryway. We did have one gentleman sign up, and the item is on our agenda, but it's on consent. So I am going to ask council to be okay with having Mr. Olson come up and express whatever it is on item agenda item 7L. And so if you're okay with that, I'm going to have him come up now and just do that versus the consent. So if you'd like to come up and just state your name and address for the record, please.
So my address is 8627 Jorgensen Avenue South. My name's Dave Olson, citizen of Cottage Grove. So yes, consent agenda item 711. First of all, I agree with the Parks Director Doctor's recommendation to accept and place on file the Mississippi Dunes Natural Resources Management Plan completed by Larissa Mott, a senior ecologist with Stantec. It's actually a really good read for those of you that may not have had a chance to read it yet. I was especially happy to see references to climate change, which gives us some flexibility on this multi-year asset of ours, this new park, to be able to adjust as we have to. But as that develops. But primarily, I want to talk about this, and I'd like to share this with council. It's page 10 from this report, and there's enough copies to go to staff as well. So during public hearings about the development just north of our park, I spoke directly to the developers about the importance of our park and the scenic and natural area, or scientific and natural area. That's managed by the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. I said that our expectations will be that those developers will do everything they can to protect these resources. They seem to get it, but I want to make sure we remind them of it whenever we have an opportunity. My concerns tonight are related more to the homeowner behavior than risks during construction, which will be mitigated by regulations and our common sense professional staff. But how we discourage potential poor behavior by future homeowners, such as yard waste dumping, pet relief in our park and our SNA, let's ask the developers for help with this. As they complete grading and elevation management, and there's going to be a lot of it in this area if you've looked, they will direct stormwater flow that what they can do to also protect the park. Let's see what they can do to protect the park and the SNA that's on the perimeter of their development. Not just comply, but be proactive in helping us protect this land and water resource along with the plants and animals that live there and that are going to live there after we invest these funds and efforts in improving it. Parks Director Doctor has stated his commitment to diligently manage our property line against encroachment, just as we do on all of our property lines. He recognizes our shared good fortune to have such a spectacular stretch of Mississippi riverfront and is enthusiastic for our role as protectors. Let's give him all the room we can and support, and all the support we can as possible, as much as possible. I understand this isn't our land I'm talking about tonight. There's a limit to what we can insist on, but there's no limit to what we can ask for. So let's do everything we can, including innovative approaches to property line management on the development side, not just the park side. Remember, too, we asked Washington County and Minnesota taxpayers to participate in this adventure. Let's do everything we can to deserve the confidence they've already shown in us. Thank you for this time tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Now, no one else had signed up out there in the entryway, just to make sure. Is there anybody else that would like to speak that didn't sign up? All right, thank you. I'll then go ahead and close the open forum, and we'll move to number 5, which is adoption of the agenda.
Motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Dennis, second by Councilmember Olson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next is 6 this evening is presentations, and we do have one this evening. We do have the presentation for the Capture Cottage Grove Photo Contest winners, and I believe our communications manager, Eric Rigby, is going to take us through this. So Eric, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Bailey. By my careful research, I believe that the city of Cottage Grove has held an annual photo contest for, this will be the 21st year that we have had a photo contest. And this year marks, we had a record number of submissions, over 120 submissions in what has become a very popular contest for Cottage Grove residents, and a great way to capture the beauty of this beautiful city. This year we focused on 5 categories that people could submit into. They're listed here as nature, celebrations and events, business, people or wildlife, and city parks or landmarks. And of the 120 plus submissions, we submitted everything with names removed, and there were 2 people who won all 5 categories. And we have one of them in attendance with us tonight. First, I'm going to run through the pictures that Isaac Pavick submitted and won in 3 categories, the first being nature. This was taken at Pine Tree Pond, very aptly named Serenity. You can feel through the picture here. And then Isaac also won in celebrations and events. And most of you will recognize this as the Strawberry Festival, held at Kingston Park in the summer.
Drone shot.
And Isaac Pavick also won in business, where he took this overhead photo of the tree farms in the Cub parking lot. So we'd like to invite Isaac up to accept a certificate now. Isaac, if you'd like to come up.
All right. Council, you want to join me down in front? Isaac, congratulations. Come on over here. All right, yes, I'm going to talk through my mask here just to be safe, but we want to congratulate Isaac for his awards for the different pictures, and I think I heard Councilmember Thede mention, was it the one, I'm assuming a drone? All of them were drones. All were drones. Okay, perfect, perfect. So what we're going to do is present you with the certificate of appreciation for the great pictures that you did. And for the public, just to be aware, is that the winners get $75 per category, right? Per category. So I guess you're going to walk away with a little extra bucks for Christmas. So very nice deal here. And so I'll just read, if you will, real quick. It just says 2022 winner, Capture Cottage Grove Photo Contest, proudly presented to Isaac Pavick for capturing serenity in the category of wildlife and nature, 'tis the season in the category of business, and warm nights and shiny lights in the category of celebrations and events. Presented this day, December 21st, 2022. So on behalf of all of us, thank you for that and congratulations. Fantastic. Well, thanks for doing the pictures.
Thank you and congratulations, Isaac. And thank you for your submissions. Our other winner tonight could not be here, but Julie Rowan, another resident of Cottage Grove, won in the remaining 2 categories. This for people or wildlife. She took this photo of her dog. This was taken at, pause for a moment, this is at Hazen P. Moore's Park. And then she also won for city parks or landmarks. This photo that she took, I believe, of her son at Ravine Park. So we'd like to thank everybody who submitted photos in what continues to be a very exciting and fun contest, and one that will definitely continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. And just as a comment for the winners, the checks will be sent to you, so we want to make sure you knew that. The other nice thing for us from the council standpoint and the staff standpoint is we get to, part of the deal is we get to utilize those pictures in upcoming marketing elements within the city. You'll see them on newsletters and things like that out there, so I wanted to just mention that. I don't know if council has any other comments on this at this point? But thank you for the great pictures, and keep up the good work. Oh, I'm sorry, there was one more thing I was going to say, and that was, it is interesting, obviously, everybody heard we had one individual who's with us tonight that won 3 categories, and another one that won 2. When the staff and our city staff is taking a look at the pictures and picking the pictures, just so you all know, their names are not on there. So the pictures are spread out. They take a picture, or they look at the pictures, and then they vote on the pictures. So no one knows who is actually going to be the winner until after the pictures have been tallied. So that, in this case, Isaac took the 3 categories, and obviously she took the 2. So I thought I'd just mention that because people might wonder, well, how did somebody get 3? So, but thank you. Thanks again.
Great job.
All right, next on our agenda is consent. Is there anything council would like to pull on consent? Okay, Councilmember Olson,
You, please.
you're gonna pull U. Okay, and then for the rest of the council, from me, I'm gonna pull M and O, just to let the public know about some donations or such, naming rights. Anybody else? All right, I guess I'll start with you, Councilmember Olson. U is Minnesota, or Explore Minnesota grant.
Thank you very much, Mayor. This item is asking us to provide direction to our city administrator to sign a contractual agreement for the 2023 tourism marketing grant with Explore Minnesota for up to $14,000, which would go to the Cottage Grove Convention and Visitors Bureau, otherwise known as Discover Cottage Grove, which you can see on the shirt. The reason I pulled this item is I act as the vice chair on the Explore Minnesota, or the Cottage Grove, or Explore Cottage Grove, or the Convention and Visitors Bureau board, and our chair is sitting to my right here, and that is Councilmember Dennis. I wanted to just take a moment to thank our communications and marketing specialist, Julie Pryor Miller, who helps us with a variety of different things relative to trying to increase our profile for tourism here in the city of Cottage Grove. And it was her who put this grant application together. Obviously, she did a very nice job because we are receiving grant funding. And for those of you who aren't clear about what it is that we do on the Convention and Visitors Bureau, I just wanted to add a couple of pieces of information for you, and then I'll certainly open it up to my colleague, the chair of our Convention and Visitors Bureau, Steve Dennis, if he'd like to add some things. But this is really the offshoot of a larger strategic plan that we've had in the city of Cottage Grove for quite some time. For those of you who don't know, we meet as a team in January with the city staff and the city council to go through what it is that we want to really focus our time, energy, and effort on with respect to a strategic plan for each calendar year. Over the past few years, one of our key components to that plan has been making the city of Cottage Grove a destination, a tourism destination, a destination for things like baseball tournaments, softball tournaments, hockey tournaments, all things that would help us fill up our hotels here in town, and then obviously fill up our restaurants, et cetera. And hence was born the Convention and Visitors Bureau. We have had a great deal of success in the short time that we've actually existed as a Convention and Visitors Bureau with getting our name out there. We've helped sponsor the Public Safety Golf Tournament. We have sponsored a day with the Minnesota Saints at a Minnesota Saints game that was very, very successful. We've done a lot with Strawberry Fest and some other activities here in the city of Cottage Grove just to help people understand who we are. But the primary reason that this grant is going to be so helpful is it's going to provide us with the necessary funding that we need in order to not only continue to do the things that we've done in our short lifespan, but actually expand our presence and help our businesses here in the city of Cottage Grove thrive, help our hotels in the city of Cottage Grove thrive, and frankly, just help people come to town and understand what a great community this is. So I'm really, really happy to see this item. I would ask for my council colleagues to please approve. It is definitely something that we've been reaching for several months on the Convention and Visitors Bureau, and it will do a lot of good for us. And with that, I'm going to ask if the chair of the Convention and Visitors Bureau has anything he would like to add.
Well, thank you, Councilmember Olson. I, along with yourself, am very proud of the work that everybody has done on that. Our staff team, and of course, a great list of volunteers here in the community. The funding that is generated mostly for this comes from lodging tax, which is a user fee that is applied through the various lodging facilities that we have, and then that money is utilized to help promote our city and put Cottage Grove on the map for all kinds of different reasons. And so, you know, it's been a little bit of a slow start. We kind of started this thing up in the time period of when COVID was very active, and of course, this is an offshoot of the work that the mayor and I do along with the EDA. When we've gone out to Las Vegas and we've met with investors who have indicated that this is a tool that they would like to see us have. And so we came back, you know, fully informed on that and motivated and went through a process, and we're able to bring together a really nice process here for the community. So we're very proud of the work that's done. Great feedback from our investors, you know, the local lodging investors, and we're just going to keep working on this hard and do everything we possibly can here to bring a good return home.
Okay, thank you. Thank you both. The two items that I pulled, I'll just mention, speaking of investing in our community, I guess. On M, there is a request by the council to approve the Ice Arena naming rights. And just for the public to be aware, for quite a while now, the city of Cottage Grove has been out looking, well, one, we looked at firms to do marketing for us. I think if you go to some of the different sports venues around the Twin Cities area, you will see a lot of venues that'll have like Healthy Sports Center or the Schwann's Rinks or whatever. And so one of the things that we talked about doing is our current group up at the Ice Arena have done an amazing job actually within the Ice Arena on the boards and on the walls and all that kind of stuff with marketing elements. So one of the other big things that we were talking about is either naming the Ice Arena or maybe naming rinks within the Ice Arena. Well, we had a conversation with North Point, who is a new investor here in our community. And North Point wants to be the naming rights for the North Rink, which is the original rink, I guess you probably say, for Cottage Grove. And they're going to be providing, as part of the naming rights for that, $800,000 over the next 10 years to have the rights have their names in that arena there. And the public might go, well, what is that really going to do? Well, I'll be honest with you, what it's going to do is it's going to reduce the tax impact, frankly, on our citizens, because that money is going to be reinvested in the needs of the Ice Arena. There's a lot of things that are on our capital improvement plans going forward that this money will be put towards, whether it's roof, HVACs, all that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to, personally, we had an opportunity earlier this evening actually have a virtual meeting with some of the investors of North Point, the development team, and we thanked them then, but I also want to just publicly thank them now out there just to say we appreciate the work that they're doing within our community and the $800,000 investment for the naming rights that are going to be part of our Ice Arena. So that's pretty awesome. The second item is O, which is the Hemsley Charitable Trust Grant Award. And I probably could have called our Director of Public Safety, Pete Kerner, up to talk about this. But just for the public to be aware, this particular grant award is going to provide the city of Cottage Grove with, and all of our police cars, and I believe fire trucks.
Every police car, detective vehicle.
Every car is going to be provided with, they're providing us with 36 AEDs And that's basically, it's just over an $82,000 grant. And so all of our police cars and different vehicles that we have are going to be equipped with these AEDs. And the great thing about that is we already have a really good, one of the best response times in our community, in the state. Second of all, we've actually seen a reduction, if you look at the information that was in our packet, a reduction in the amount of, I'll say, I know this sounds horrible to say it this way, but deaths due to heart attacks, because we get there quicker, and then when we have tools like this, and then also train those in the community to use tools like this, the fact of the matter is the opportunity to save lives grows immensely. So I just wanted to mention, and I'm sure we'll send them something too, but this Hemsley Charitable Trust, we want to thank them for this generous donation of 36 AEDs totaling just over $82,000. So I thought I'd just mention that. Yes, Councilmember Dennis.
Thank you, Mayor. That's an incredible donation. AED is automatic external defibrillator. And what that does, it's a device that can be hooked up to someone who's having an arrhythmia, or their heart is stopped, or they've got some other issue relative to their heartbeat, and this will provide a shock to get people back into a rhythm that will allow them to sustain life. So I want to say, because I have some friends who are both Minneapolis and St. Paul police officers, and those departments, as big as they are, with all of the opportunity they have, they do not have those tools. So this is such a blessing for us to have this here in our community and be available to assist people in every circumstance where we can. So it's just amazing.
Yeah, and I guess the one other plug, and I know we already made one plug earlier this evening, this wouldn't have happened if it weren't for our public safety department individuals actually going out after the grants. So whether it's our staff doing naming rights for the ice arena, whether it's a grant coming from Explore Minnesota, or all these different, I can look to Zach and the number of grants that we're getting in our Parks Department. You guys are doing an amazing job working to get the money that can to fund these kind of things and bring this back to serve the citizens of Cottage Grove. So I just want to say thank you to all of you for that. All right, was there anything else that wanted to be pulled off of consent? If seeing none, I will look for a motion to approve
Move
consent.
consent.
All right. We have a motion by Councilmember Olson, second by Councilmember Thiede. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. So if you are here for anything that's on tonight's consent calendar, all of those items have been approved. Next on our agenda is 8 is approved disbursement, 8A is to pay the bills.
Motion to pay the bills.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Dennis,
I'll second that.
second by Councilmember Kambata. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. 9 is in public hearings, we have none this evening. 10 is bid awards. We do have a bid award this evening, which is the Glacial Valley Park Bid Award. And our Parks and Recreation Director, Zach Doctor, I believe, is going to walk us through this one.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. As you're aware, the bid award process is a culmination of a lot of hard work by council, commissioners, and the entire project team. So thank you for the time tonight to present to you the Glacial Valley Park Building Project. Glacial Valley Park is our newest community park in Cottage Grove. If you're not familiar with the difference between community parks and neighborhood parks, community parks serve at least a 1-mile radius, but are really designed to serve the entire community and also a broad array of visitors from outside of Cottage Grove as well. Glacial Valley Park is actually our first community park in almost 20 years. So it's been quite a while. We're excited to bring a new community park to the northeast side of the community. And this park's going to include a playground, a large playground, picnic shelters, courts for both pickleball and basketball, a baseball diamond, a rectangular sports field, ice rink, trails, landscaping, parking, and one of the coolest features is the connection to the Minnesota DNR and South Washington Watershed District open space. They also have a significant amount of trails. We're running through their prairie and wetlands there, and then also they're going to have a very large interpretive center to the north and to the west of this, so it's going to be a great connection to a lot of open space and great habitat. The objective of the Glacial Valley Park building design was to construct a unique park building that serves to the present and future recreational facility needs for both residents and visitors of Cottage Grove. The goals, three primary goals. One is to create a sophisticated design that inspires the community's use and appreciation. 2, create connections with park, nature, history, and art. And then the third is to create a sustainable design that meets the needs of generations of park users. So we're building this, we would be looking to build this facility for today, for tomorrow, and generations of users. The building floor plan is fairly unique, and it's displayed on the right-hand side of your slide here. There's a large multi-purpose room, which is kind of the key feature of this facility. It's about 1,500 square feet. It can be used for a wide array of meetings, events, programs, and whatever it might be. It's also supported by a 500 square foot kitchenette and furniture storage area. There's also a classroom program room of about 955 square feet. In the center, pictured in the tan color, is a lobby / warming room / commons room, which is about 600 square feet. And then there's a storage facility of about 440 square feet, and then lots of outdoor gathering and support spaces such as restrooms, vestibules, mechanical rooms, electrical rooms, a large outdoor pad area that is adjacent or connects to the park, and then picnic areas and rest areas, and even a outdoor fire pit. Try to be very creative innovative with our building design elements. Some examples include historical land connections. As the council may remember, the very first meeting we had, we tried to tie it into the history of the land there, and it was really focused on that glacier element. So the facility, I don't need to rehash all the ways we incorporated that glacial movement into the facility, but particularly the roof, showing kind of that glacial divide and how the earth has moved over the thousands of years. One of the key components for the recreational side is a multi-use design. We can program multiple events under one roof. We can program a wide variety of events under one roof as well. So there's going to be artistic elements incorporated into the facility. It's got a retractable glass wall, which is shown on this, shown on the image to the right. One of the neat things about that is, to my knowledge, it's the only retractable glass wall in Cottage Grove to this extent. So it's going to be very neat. It's going to really create that connection from the indoor to the outdoor and the outdoor to the indoor. Geothermal heating and cooling system and a solar-powered system to provide for electrical needs. So we expect 95% plus of the time that this will be a net zero facility. So really, we just have a backup boiler that should be able that can kick in for any times those doors are open. We need quick heat recovery, but really for general operation, it's going to be a net zero building. And then, of course, we talked about the outdoor connections, which you can kind of see through the patio here and connecting to the park and into the larger open space through the watershed district as well. So should the council choose to approve bids tonight, the project looks like this. From January through April of 2023, we would take time to coordinate the schedule, secure materials. In May of 2022, we would expect to break ground. In October of 2022, we'd expect the project to be complete. The results of the project bids, the construction manager's estimate was $3,643,353. The total of all value of all bids received was $3,688,487. So a little bit over the manager's estimate, but it was about 1.2% over. 1.2% over the construction manager's estimate. And all bids were verified for accuracy, bid bond, certificate of insurance, and addendum recognition. That was all done by our construction manager, Kraus Anderson. So before you tonight is a motion for consideration to authorize a resolution for awarding contracts for the Glacial Valley Park Building and assigning certain contracts to Kraus Anderson. I'll take any questions that you might have.
All right, Councilmember Thiede.
So first off, we got some information that 3.6 isn't the number anymore. Is that true in terms of?
This has been adjusted to the current number. The updated information in your packet.
Right, so the total project costs are now 4.859?
Oh, so these are the value of the bids. The total project costs, the value of the bids that were received, which is what the council's authorizing tonight, that's the 3.6. The total project is $4,859,641.61 on the estimate provided in the packet.
So based on the information that you provided to us earlier, what was, so the change you're saying is that the 50, $55,000 increase. What, how does that play into what we're looking at here? The
Councilman Thedes.
55,865.
Yeah, so we were originally under budget by about $15,000, and because of that change on Friday and the emailed updated report on Monday, that added $55,000 to that, so it's an approximately $40,000 overage from the initial submittal. We had a, just for the public's
Yeah, I was going to say, you
awareness
might
and
want
for
to
the
share
council.
what's the difference.
We had an electrical bid that we were notified Friday night that the electrician was not able to fulfill their obligation in that bid because they had left out some information, or they had not submitted labor for a particular part of the construction, and they had asked if they could include that labor back into the package. Well, once the bids are publicly open, we can't allow them to come back and add to the project. So we eliminated from them, we went to the second lowest bidder, and that was the $55,000 difference.
They were higher by 55.
Yeah, and I believe legally we can't do it because once bid, I mean, do you want to, Corey, you want to mention on that? Because I think that was probably part of the questions that were happening by the council when we found that out. So if you want to share, that would be awesome.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the council, after a public bid is opened, a bidder cannot change their bid. So if they made a mistake on it and they request to be withdrawn from the bidding process, they can do that if we determine it truly was a mistake, which it was. So we allowed them to do that. But we are still getting the full value of what needed to be bid. So we're actually paying for the project for that particular portion of it. So it was slightly higher than the lowest bid, but it wasn't a significant difference between the two bids.
55,000, I guess, but, so a couple questions that I had, and I'd like to have you share some of this information, Zach. In terms of, so if we decided that, you know, with some of the costs going down, things like that, you know, the inflation, the pricing of materials and so forth have been going down and coming back into line a little bit, you know, is it, do we have the ability to actually not accept any of these bids legally?
Your Honor, members of the council can choose to reject all bids. If you felt like you just weren't getting the project that you wanted, certainly, you could reject all bids. That's the decision you're making tonight, is whether or not you want to move forward with the project. Staff is recommending that we approve them. We think that, again, even with the, it was an electrical bid, we're getting $52,000 in value. It is costing, because that's what the lowest bidder would have had to add to his bid. So the difference between the two bids really is not significant, and we're recommending approval of all of them.
Okay.
Okay,
But if we did decide not to approve this tonight, we'd still be able to use the park and put the building in, and get that bid and put that in later?
Yeah, that's correct. The park would still be usable. It would just, we just have to grade out the spot that's been set aside for the building, just grade that out so it's safe, and then it could be used. I did talk to our construction manager, you know, to rebid, just to follow up some of your question. To rebid would be a minimum of 60 days, but they also advise that rebidding 60 days later is not likely to change the results. So they would not recommend rebidding within at least a calendar year or more.
All right.
okay. Councilmember Dennis, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to mention, and, you know, I sent Zach an email response to the letter you had put out for us. And, you know, I mean, we live in an imperfect world and sometimes things happen. But, you know, ultimately you want to be reasonable with what you do. And so, you know, I had no issue for supporting going with the second bid. And as you had pointed out in your materials, that we do have a contingency that we spec out for, and we're still well within that range of what that contingency is. And you just never know. There might be some other things that come up that affect us positively, and we can, you know, get a little bit of adjustment back. So, but, you know, it's one of those things. What can you do, right? Bottom line.
Councilmember Olson?
Thank you very much, Mayor. Thanks for the explanation, Corey. I too was very quick on the keyboard with respect to asking some questions about the change. And the way I understand it, and Zach, please correct me if I'm wrong, is we had an entire project bid, and then the subcontractor who does the electrical work within the scope of that entire project bid reached out to the general contractor, Kraus, and said, oops, I goofed, and I forgot to add in some labor costs in my bid. That additional $52,000 would have needed to be added to the project cost based on that error. However, legally, we cannot accept that initial bidder's $52,000 change because all the other bids had been opened. So to put it in very fundamental terms, you know, you asked me to build you a deck, and I told you it would cost me $10,000 to do that, and you accepted my offer of $10,000 to do that. Well, then all the other bids came in, and they were $15,000, $16,000, and I thought to myself, gosh, I really undercut myself. Maybe I better do a couple of add-ins here just to make up a little extra profit margin, and that's really not playing by the rules as it relates to this bidding process. So we had no choice but to go with the second lowest bidder. The second lowest bidder was a $55,000 difference versus the $52,000 difference that the first bidder wanted to add. So net, it's a $3,000 difference. Is that correct?
That's correct, Councilman Olson.
And my esteemed colleague, Councilmember Dennis, talked about contingency, which is something that gets built into every project of this nature that we do, whether we build this building, whether we build a fire station, et cetera. Can you just speak momentarily about really the reason for having contingency monies as part of the overall project cost, or would you like Jennifer to do that?
Councilman Olson, I can speak to that. Yeah, contingencies are to protect us from the unknowns. So we have over $300,000 in contingency for anything from when you start to dig. You don't know what's under the ground all the time. When you hook up electrical, you know there's maybe things that have missed or connections that have been missed in the design process. And sometimes it's all, well, I should say, all the contingency funds are managed by the city. So we control what gets expensed to that contingency fund. So it's my vow to you that I always try, that we will always try to reduce the amount of contingency funds we use to bring that back to the city. So, but you do have to have it because there's just so many unknowns with a project of this size that you have to be prepared for. And to not have contingency funds would be, quite honestly, foolish to not be prepared for some of those unknowns.
So in other words, we're authorizing as part of this overall project cost, a slush fund of, let's just use a round number, $300,000 for any change orders or anything that, you know, comes in along the lines of, we had a delayed, vendor with their materials and it costs us an extra 10 grand for transportation of those materials, something like that. But at the end of the entire process here, you're going to have an actual product cost, an actual cost for this building. And if we are able to build it and not use all of those contingency funds, you're going to deliver a building that comes in under what we budgeted. Is that accurate?
That is correct, Councilman Olson.
Okay. Thank you for helping me understand that better. I appreciate it.
Okay, so just for by the way, Zach, thank you, and thanks for Wold for, I have to say thanks to Wold because we've been, and Zach, of course, but because we have kind of went back and kind of added the geothermal because we wanted to be as net neutral, or net zero, I should say, on this particular site. Very impressed and happy with Councilmember Dennis had suggested, which I know you added in there too, this opportunity for a bidding situation for artwork and trying to get the community and artists out there to help us with some of the artwork and the designing on the inside of the building. So I think when we talk about, and you mentioned it earlier, this is a very unique building and a very unique area of our community. And so this is not going to be your atypical warming house, so to speak, in a park. And so it's much more extensive than that. And I do like what I'm seeing, and I do like the fact of where you got us to at this particular point. So I know you will manage the dollars, and And I definitely do support us moving forward on this project, so.
Another question.
Yeah, Councilmember Thiede, another question?
Just out of curiosity, do we take care of the boiler room? Because right now with the geothermal, it's actually a smaller boiler. But if something should happen, where we have to do something and put in a regular sized boiler to cover that building, the boiler room is not big enough? Do we do anything with that?
It's my understanding the shared wall can be moved, so that it's on a shared wall. That wall can be moved into the storage facility to account for that.
So that would be maybe one of the things that Councilmember Olson calls our slush fund, but which may not be the greatest terminology for it. But so at any rate, okay, so we're prepared for that possibility. All right, thanks.
Okay. All right, so council, you have a motion before you that's on the screen.
Here, I'll make the motion to authorize a resolution for awarding contracts for the Glacial Valley Park Building and assigning certain contracts to Kraus Anderson.
All right, so we have a motion by Councilmember Dennis, second by Councilmember Olson. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. Thank you both for coming.
Thank you, Council.
All right, next is 11 is regular agenda. This has been kind of a long time coming. This is the City Code Recodification and 2023 fee table. And our city attorney, Corey Land, is going to walk us through this one.
I am. Thank you, Your Honor. This has been such a long and wonderful process. This is the final culmination, final chapter of the City Code Recodification project. So I appreciate everybody coming along this journey with us. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a brief history on where we've come and where we are today. As you know, we started in February of 2021, where we initiated the project, and it was started with the former city clerk who developed an access database so that both all of city staff as well as my office could share a document and revise and redline and comment and work together without always having to be in the same room. And yet we did then come together on several occasions and meet with city staff, went through many redline versions, throughout a lot of sections. And then we determined that the zoning section needed a little more time and attention. And so I designated one attorney from my office to meet with the Community Development Department almost weekly between February and really as recently as probably last week to make sure that the zoning code was careful, thoughtfully gone through in every single section, just about every single word, to make sure it was an amazing document that can be used hopefully for the next 20 years, because the last one has lasted you 20 years. We held 5 workshops with the council. I appreciate your patience on all of that. We wanted to make sure that we got appropriate feedback along the way so that we weren't taking down a path that you didn't want to go. We held 4 workshops with the Planning Commission so that they could understand and provide adequate feedback for the Community Development Department on all of the zoning sections. We held public comment, open houses to allow the public time to come in and ask questions. We held a chamber event, a business over breakfast. We wanted to make sure that both the residents as well as the business residents understood exactly what we were doing with all of the parts of the code that affect them. As you know, the Planning Commission held its public hearing on all of the zoning, the map amendment, as well as the text amendment on Monday night, the 19th. And the final adoption of all of the city code and the zoning map and the zoning ordinance amendments are tonight before you. If approved, the effective date will be January 1st of 2023. Just a general overview of what we were looking at while we were revising the city code over the last 2 years. First of all, we needed to confirm all statutory citations were still relevant, were still appropriate, were still in effect. We updated all of the cross-references as we were moving parts within the code. We had to make sure that the cross-references within the code were keeping up. As you know, when you adopt an ordinance, over the 20 years, you aren't always consistent on your formatting, on your terminology, on your capitalization. And so we have gone through every capitalized term to make sure that it is always capitalized, that every section is formatted exactly the same way. So as of this minute, this document is amazing. We organized by consolidating sections, by moving sections into their right spots. We deleted unnecessary sections. We found a lot of statutory regurgitation that we don't need to have in the code. So we removed things that didn't need to be there. We updated things for best practices. As you know, you learn as you go. The Corey of 2018 isn't as smart as the Corey of 2022. And so we've learned some things that we were able to implement into this new city code. We cleaned up a lot of outdated language, unnecessary language. We introduced new ordinances. Staff always has a to-do list. As you're going along and you're looking at the code and you go, wow, this is kind of bumpy, put that on my to-do list to clean up later. It's not like super high priority that we do it, but put it on my to-do list. We got out all of their to-do lists and we to-done them. They're in this book. We made sure all of the lists got cleaned up. We have a new zoning map for you because we felt like all of the zoning, sometimes the zoning districts didn't pan out like we expected them to. And so the best way to clean up the zoning map was to do a do-over. Sometimes do-overs aren't just for kindergartners. They're for other people too. And so we're doing a do-over with the zoning map. We updated all of the zoning sections to make sure that the standards and the development that we were looking at, every single standard in there was appropriate for today. Not for 20 years ago, but for today. And really, and the bottom line was to make this city code more user-friendly for the residents, for the business residents, for the council, so that when you read it, you can understand what you're reading. It's not legalese, and for the staff to be able to be efficient and effective and interpret this so that they can have an amazing code for everybody to understand. Put it in English. One of my main goals is to put it in English. So that's the product that we have before you. I'm going to briefly walk through most of the sections. Some of them we're going to dive into a little bit deeper. We have 11 titles in the code, and so I'll just briefly touch on all of them. Title I, Administration, the most important thing that we did was we added a general penalty section. And that is because when you do have a violation of the code, you need to know who's going to enforce it. So we have a list of officers who can enforce it. We have, when they do need to do inspections, we have a uniform inspection process that's at least the minimum. The staff can go above and beyond the minimum if they would like to give 48 or 96 hours notice. We're saying you have to give at least 48 hours notice before you do an inspection, but they could give a week's notice. And then it has to be during business hours. You have to have the right people doing the inspections. The penalty, as you know, for violating a city code is a misdemeanor, and so that is clearly spelled out. But if there is a notice sent to a resident or to a business owner for violating something in the code, there's an appeal process before it gets to a criminal citation. So if somebody wants to challenge the notice, they can do that now. And the process is this, and the city administrator loves this new provision that we put in the code, because ultimately it will be her decision. So if there is a notice from an enforcement officer who's on the list, the person who has received the notice can file an objection within 10 days. And they file that with the city clerk, and they do have to pay a $200 appeal filing fee, because there's a cost to that for city staff to take time to investigate, for the city administrator to take time to hold the appeal hearing, but then ultimately it will be either with the city administrator or her designee to hold that appeal hearing and give that person due process. So we think that's a really important new tool. We also are introducing an excessive use of public safety services fee. As you know, sometimes there are certain properties or people that do tend to take a little bit more time than the rest of the community. And so they just need to get a little incentive to do a self-correction. And sometimes hitting people in the pocketbook is the way to do that. So it's strictly for people who are creating or properties that are public nuisance type violations. So it's neighborhood issues. Animals, noise, false alarms, disorderly conducts has to be the same person, the same property, and the same violation. And if they receive 2 calls within a 12-month period, they will get a letter saying you do it again within 12 months, and you will receive a fine. So then with the 3rd call, they will get that fee, and they will be expected to pay it. And if it happened at a certain property, at the same property, then, and they don't pay it, it would be assessed against the property. So it's not intended to be any kind of revenue generating, it's strictly cost recovery. Staff spends a ridiculous amount of time sometimes on these problem properties, and so we're trying to nudge people into self-correction. Title II is boards and commissions, so we put all of the boards and commissions now in one section, including the Advisory Committee for Historic Properties. That was buried in zoning, and it really needs to live with its friends. Title III is business and license regulations. We now have a new one-stop shop for all licensing provisions so that they're not repeated in all of the different licensing sections that we had within the code. They're now all at the beginning. It has all the application submission requirements, the insurance requirements, how to pay the fees, when we're going to do background investigations and what we're looking for when we do them, when the renewal application must be submitted, the license term, and then a nice general process for approval, for denial, for suspension and revocation, all right in one section. So again, we don't have to be repetitive throughout the code. We are also adding a new tool for the council. So for those renewal applications where that business may not have been a perfect citizen, perfect corporate citizen over the last 12 months, the city can institute a provisional license on that particular business with a mitigation plan to address the issues that came to light over the previous 12 months. So it only applies to a business who has generated 3 code violations within the previous 12 months. So that there's definitely an issue that needs to be addressed. The council could choose to implement a provisional license with a mitigation plan that has conditions related to that particular problem. So for example, if it's an on-sale liquor establishment and they have a lot of bar fights, you could put them on a provisional license with a mitigation plan that says you must have on-site security all the time. Paid security company, a professional, not your brother-in-law. So we would, put that sort of mitigation plan, again, just to correct the actual issue with that particular business. As you know, we've discussed this at length, the new intoxicating CBD license. So it's not for the non-intoxicating CBD products. It's only those retail businesses that are selling the intoxicating with 0.3% THC. They will have to comply with the licensing regulations. So they must be licensed as of January 1st to sell intoxicating CBD. They can only do it within specific zoning districts. They must comply with all of our regulations. They must be 1,000 feet from any other CBD license. So if you're the first one to get one, the next one that comes in must be 1,000 feet from that first one. They also have to be 1,000 feet from a school, park, or playground, as you know. They will not be allowed to be also in conjunction with an on-sale liquor license. And we do have a current moratorium in place, so upon adoption and implementation of this ordinance, the moratorium will terminate. The license fee is $10,200. Title IV is Public Health and Safety, and this is where all of our nuisance sort of examples live, and this is how we address our code enforcement for nuisance properties. Everybody knows what a nuisance property is when you see it, but it's really tough to define, and our current language in the code was a little bit less than ideal in enforcement. So one of the things we wanted to do is provide more robust definitions of what exactly a public nuisance is, and then provide alternative enforcement methods. Instead of just saying it's a criminal citation, we're allowing alternatives to develop swift corrective action and authorize a very clear, efficient process for city staff to follow. So some of the definitions that I've underlined the terms that sort of stand out to me when you're trying to identify what a public nuisance is. Any activity that is an annoyance to the public, that can be a public nuisance. Failing to remove garbage, that's a public nuisance. Property maintenance nuisances are when you're not maintaining your structure that's on your property, and it has a detrimental impact to the surrounding neighborhood. Unsheltered storage. You may have unsightly debris or unsightly materials of which have an adverse effect upon the neighborhood. That doesn't mean that your barbecue grill in your backyard can't be stored outside. Of course it can. You use that. Your unused washing machine in your backyard? No, that cannot be stored in your backyard. So that's what I mean when I'm talking about unsheltered storage. And the most effective tool to deal with unsheltered storage or any of the other public nuisances is abatement. So what we will do is when we identify the nuisance, staff, the code enforcement officer will inspect, will identify specifically the violation in a letter to the property owner, explain the section of the code that they're violating, provide a compliance deadline, and that will be case specific. It's not going to be a generic, you have 48 hours, you have 7 days, you have 30 days. It's going to be specific to that particular nuisance violation. Some may take longer than others to clean up, and we fully recognize that. Some, really, you can pick up that wood in your backyard in a day. So we will be very specific to the violation, and then it will state that failure to correct will result in the city removing it for you. Then code enforcement will go back out and re-inspect, and if it is not cleaned up, they will order the abatement. And so the city staff will arrange for a company to come in and clean up the nuisance, send the invoice to the property owner. If they fail to pay the invoice, it will be assessed against the property. It is swift, it is efficient, it is super effective. My favorite example of code enforcement through abatement is this property that had a little bit of an issue using their lawnmower. The property owner was very adamant that she preferred her lawn this way. After many, many notices, the city finally abated the weeds, and lo and behold, there was a cute little house behind that. So it can be extremely effective to use abatement. Title V, police regulations, we didn't do any substantial changes, but we did add 2 new provisions. Catalytic converters is one of them. The state law doesn't quite get at the problem of catalytic converter theft because they require scrap metal dealers to keep records of purchasing catalytic converters, which is really helpful for scrap metal dealers. But it doesn't help when you stop somebody with a trunk full of catalytic converters because there's no state law to charge them with. So now it will be a misdemeanor in the city of Cottage Grove to possess a catalytic converter unless you have proof of purchase. Third-party gift cards is another serious problem in the Twin Cities because what happens is you go to the gym, your wallet is stolen, a thief takes your credit card, goes to Walmart, and buys up a whole bunch of gift cards. Nobody has to check the ID on the credit card, so they just got away with two thefts because they used your credit card and they stole a whole bunch of money on all of these gift cards. So the simple solution that another city came up with, which has been very, very effective at deterring these thefts within their community, is to simply require the retailer to ask for proof of ID. When somebody's buying a gift card with a credit card, they ask for proof of ID. A thief doesn't have it. So they will stop doing it in your community because they don't have proof of ID for that credit card. It's a tiny bit of inconvenience for the retailer, a tiny bit of inconvenience for you who's buying the gift card with your credit card, but in the end, it will deter thefts, it will save a ton of investigating time for the police department, and as I said, the other communities who have implemented this ordinance have found it to be amazing on the reduction in these kinds of investigations they have to do for these thefts. Title VI, motor vehicles and traffic. The one I wanted to point out to you, there's a lot of these new recreational vehicles or personal motorized foot scooters and electric bikes. Nobody knows where you can ride them. So we made it very, very clear in the ordinance what can be ridden where. Recreational vehicles, so your ATVs are allowed on streets by state law if both the vehicle and the driver are licensed, but they are prohibited in the city of Cottage Grove on sidewalks and in public parks. Motorized foot scooters and electric bikes the same way. They are allowed by law on streets, but they are prohibited in the city of Cottage Grove with this ordinance on sidewalks and in public parks. The electric personal assistive mobility devices, those are the ones that are for disabled public. They are allowed anywhere by law. So if you find those on the sidewalks and parks, that's fine. Title VII, Public Ways and Property, this is the parks section, and we put a new provision in the parks section. I discovered as we were going along and we were talking about the special event permit, which we were eliminating, there was no process spelled out in city code about how park permits were approved. So that's where this now lives, parks and parades. If you are applying for a permit in a city park, the Park and Rec staff can approve that administratively. So there's no more special event permit, no more public hearings. The council won't have to hear all of these events at your council meetings. Instead, it will be a simple administrative, we're trying to remove the red tape from these events. Everybody that does the big events knows how to do them now. They do them so well. We will still have Park and Rec staff be reviewing them. If it's a public safety issue, they will go to the public safety director for approval as well. And any parade, because it's in the right-of-way, will still require the public safety department to approve. Titles 8 through 10, no major changes in 8 and 9. We did find a bunch of building regulations scattered throughout the code, so we put them all in one spot in Title 9. And Title 10 is coming in 2023. The subdivision regulations really requires community development to dive in. They were busy with zoning, and so we felt like we could take a pause on the subdivision regulations, and we'll tackle that in 2023. Zoning. There's 2 things that we're doing with zoning. The map amendment, as I indicated, as well as a repeal and replacement of all of the text. So the map amendment was initiated, as you know, in November. The council passed a resolution authorizing a rezoning of the citywide, and that then waived the mailed notice requirement under code. Normally, when you rezone a particular part of the city, you send out mailed notice to people within 350 feet of the property that's being rezoned. That's a little difficult to do when you're rezoning the entire city. So by doing this resolution, you authorized waiving that mailed notice requirement. Planning Commission, as I said, held a public hearing on it on Monday, recommended its approval, but the map amendment must be approved with a supermajority vote tonight. So this is our current zoning map. It has a lot of stripes on it. It has a lot of different zoning districts on it. There's 5 industrial districts. If you count all of the ones that have residential, I think there's 9. Staff really felt like there could be a lot of consolidation. There's a lot, as I said, of zoning districts that weren't used for their intended purposes. So we put them in the zoning districts where it made the most sense for them, what they really looked like anyway. So this is the new zoning map. As you can see, it's cleaned up a lot. There's fewer zoning districts. There's a lot less color. There are no stripes. For properties that were, hey, I was a 2.5, what am I today? I'm an R3 today. How does that affect me? You are legal nonconforming. So any rights that you had under 2.5 will continue to exist. You'll be a legal nonconforming use. We tried to eliminate as many legal nonconformities as we could by giving more flexible standards to all those that were being upzoned. But there might be some remnant legal nonconforming conditions on properties, and they will get to continue to be as long as the use is not stopped for more than a year and the use is not destroyed by fire and they don't rebuild within 6 months. So, for example, in the residential zoning districts, we combined the R2.5, moved them into R3. But again, we use the most flexible zoning standards, so they shouldn't be deprived of any of the existing things they can do today. R3, as we discussed with the council, it's a single-family residential zoning district, so we eliminated the multifamily housing option. R4 changed names to transitional district because it really is between the single-family, which is a lower density, and the R5, which is a higher density, so it's the middle. But you can't call it the middle, so we're calling it the transitional district. And we removed R2A through F because we didn't really use it. It had a purpose at the time it was created, but again, it never really panned out the way it was expected. So we removed all the 2A through Fs and put them in the R3. So these are the development standards and what they currently are and what the new standards are. And as you can see, there's not a ton of significant changes, but if it was a more flexible standard in the R2.5, we wanted to make sure that carried over into the R3. So that's where it is today. We eliminated the lot area because instead it's more of if you can meet the minimum depth and the minimum width, then do math. And that's your new lot area. So we eliminated that requirement that there be a minimum lot area. Now, there was one section that when the Planning Commission reviewed that they wanted the council to chew up a little bit. So in the R3 side yard setback, currently we have a 10-foot setback between the living area of the dwelling and the side yard, and if it's a garage, it's a 5-foot setback. The Planning Commission really wanted to see 15 feet between dwellings, no matter what. They want to see 15 feet. Staff is still recommending what is in the recommendation, which is 7.5 feet if it's from a dwelling and 5 feet if it's from a garage. And I'll let Mike explain why.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The reason why is because since 2019, the city has approved roughly 1,100 units with those standards. So we want to continue that development trend with this new code, as we're seeing a lot of requests for that. That's the intent behind it.
So as you can see, we're trying to, again, mirror what is happening in actual development world, and we fully recognize and respect the fact that the Planning Commission would like to see 15 feet, but in reality, that's not what developers are asking for today. The council can always revisit this if standards change or development changes in the future, but we really feel that this is what is meeting what the developers are requesting and demanding in the market. And so we still stand by the 7.5-foot recommendation for side yard from the living area of a dwelling.
Can I make a comment?
Councilmember Thede?
Yeah, as a liaison to the Planning Commission and having been there as their discussion and the fact that they did a conditional approval to support this with, but only, you know, with looking at the change with the keeping it 10 and 5 foot. You know, the other discussion was that if a developer wanted that, two things. Number one, if the developer wanted the 7.5 and the 5, then they could put in a variance, okay? And the other thing is like Commissioner Britton pointed out, is that you know, if they want to do the 7.5 and the 5, you know, they could do that in an R4. So R4 is a place where that comes down together a little bit more, and the concern was in the discussion in the Planning Commission was that, you know, you end up getting houses that could be 10 feet apart, that you only have 10 foot between the surfaces of their buildings. So, so just to let you know that that was the discussion in the planning commission, and it was you know, well, there's 5 of them there Monday night, so it was a 5-0 conditional approval with keeping the you know, changing it to back to the 10 and the 5. So.
So that's up for the council's discussion as to whether or not you want to keep it 7.5 feet. As we indicated, this is what the developers have been asking for in the last 4 years, consistently for 7.5 feet. And it would be creating a lot of legal nonconforming setbacks if the council chose to keep it at 10, because we have allowed the 7.5 feet. The R4 changes, again, very similar, doing away with the lot area requirements, giving more flexible standards in the setbacks on some of them, trying to maintain many of the principal height stays the same. We also did add a maximum lot coverage of impervious surface to make sure that people are not paving their entire yards with impervious surface. The business and industrial districts, we didn't really change a significantly many things. We more just tried to clean up a lot of the uses. We found that our use table got into a lot of detail, and so we tried to eliminate some of the detail and put things more in general categories. We also removed the neighborhood business district because, again, it didn't seem to serve any purpose. The industrial districts, we reduced from 5 to 3, so the I-1 and I-2 were combined into the I-1. The I-3, we combined the I-3 and the I-5 into the I-2, and then the I-4 became the I-3. So it's a little bit confusing, but we really didn't try to change the intent of any of those districts. We just tried to reduce some of the duplicity, and then the I-1 never really, again, was developed the way it was intended. Signs coming in 2023. On the parking for businesses, what we did is we discovered that the old math used the gross area of the whole building, regardless of if there were different uses in the building, and the new math breaks it down. So you actually have to calculate the different uses within a building and then apply the calculation or the formula for those uses. I mean, it makes a lot of sense when you think about it, and the perfect example is Walmart. Walmart has a 177,000 square foot building, so if you just go straight math on the gross floor area of the entire building, you need 889 stalls. But Walmart is not just one big giant retail building. They have a storage area, they have a clinic, they have a restaurant. All of those have different formulas for parking. And so when you apply them individually to those different uses based on the square footage of those uses, you actually end up with 170 less stalls. That's a significant number, and that's probably more accurate. Now, the other thing that we learned is that many of these businesses really know what they need for parking. Walmart's no dummy. They know exactly how many customers they need at their maximum time, and that's how many stalls they're going to want to have. But it might be less than 719. So what we did is added a new provision of proof of parking. So if they can come in and prove to us that they don't need 719 stalls, they actually only need 650, but they have a nice big green space over here, that they can show proof of parking, that if we do have parking problems, we can make them build it, and we'll have that as a condition in their approval, that we can pull the trigger if we determine that there is insufficient parking, that they have to build it, that proof of parking will satisfy their parking needs. So the last thing that we wanted to touch on is, because of all of the things that we're implementing and changing around, is we need to update our fee table. So we're adding some new fees as we discussed. We're also eliminating some fees. We went through the fee table and went, do we really need to license tree services and lawn care services? And we determined that didn't really have a whole lot of usefulness to the city to license them. As we said, we eliminated the special event permit. So those things are coming out, some new ones are going in. And then, of course, every year you always adopt a new fee schedule anyway, just for inflationary increases. Again, the fee schedule is not where we're trying to generate revenue. It's cost recovery, and usually it's not all of the costs are being recovered. We're just trying to get back what we're putting into it if we can, but being reasonable with the community. So that we have the fee table for you as well that we're asking you to adopt. I'm gonna take a breath and thank the city staff. This has been an amazing journey to go with them. And I need to thank them for their cooperation, for their patience, for their diligence, for their unbelievable thoughtfulness and attention. Every time I would say no, they would respond, or I would say, I need, and I need it now. They would respond. They were an amazing group to work with, and I can't thank you enough for letting me work with them. I can't thank their boss enough for giving them such great direction and leadership and allowing them the time that we took from their daily worlds. They have a regular work life that they needed to do, and yet they carved out time to devote to this project, and they were really, really great to work with. And a special thank you to Tammy, who jumped in to be city clerk at the most inopportune time. This is a big project for a city clerk to manage, and she has been wonderful and a really quick study. And so I put her through the ropes on Friday as we were trying to get the packet together, and I can't thank her enough for staying late, for going the extra mile. This has been a great project to work on, and I thank you for your time and attention to it and your patience with it. And Merry Christmas. This is my Christmas present to you, a bright and shiny new city code book.
I don't know if I'm,
So with that,
well, the code's great, but I don't know about that Christmas present.
these are the actions before you tonight.
Sounds good, thank you. Councilmember Dennis.
All right, thanks, Mayor. Well, yeah, this was an amazing project, and, you know, looking back a few years ago, some of us on the council had talked about different things we had on the books, and some of the provisions and rules dated back to the 1970s. So it was time that we could become concurrent with what happens now and bring everything up forward. So it was a tremendously heavy lift, a lot of time put in by everybody. Very nice work done by our staff team, everyone who made the difference. And I do want to say, you know, a lot of this material can be rather dry, really dry. And I am just amazed, Corey, at how you brought so much enthusiasm tonight to this presentation, because I don't know how you did it. You're a trial attorney too, right? So you probably brought some of that skill set in on it, but a very nice job by everyone together. And I think we've got something fantastic for the community now to work with, hopefully for a long time to come. And then we just keep it a living document would be my recommendation, so that as changes come, we incorporate those in real time, get it in front of the council and different groups we have to do to work to make it happen, and keep everything consistent. So thank you very much.
Sounds good. Councilmember Olson.
Thank you. I wrote down on my notepad here, Corey is very excited. Your use of the word amazing, like 5 times, was definitely an indicator that you get fired up about this stuff. I don't think I've ever seen you that fired up. So thank you for bringing that to the table tonight. I do have some questions, and the problem is I don't know who they need to be directed to. So I'm going to start with this side of the room, and then you two can delegate if there's anything else. And by the way, with respect to your comments about Tammy, if you know Tammy, that's no surprise. She's awesome. So I would even say amazing. Yeah. So here are my questions. First of all, Councilmember Thiede mentioned that the Planning Commission wanted to stick with what is currently in our code. And I'm curious as to why. Why did they want to stick with that? Can anybody answer that for me? Was there a specific reason that they articulated?
Mayor, members of the council, the Planning Commission was concerned about homes being too close together. I think it was plain and simple that was the concern, and looking at the proposed setbacks was a little tight, and that was their concern and why they proposed to leave it as is.
Were they concerned about the homes being too close together just as a general aesthetic, or were they concerned because it might have some detrimental impact, for example, on public safety response or something along those lines?
Mayor and council, they didn't make clear any of those concerns specifically, but it looks like Mr. Thiede has something to add.
Councilmember, do you
I
want
can
to?
share.
Yeah, answer, please.
I can share. One of the things that, for instance, Commissioner Britton brought up was especially, and depending on where these houses were built, if there was quite a grade and so forth, that, there are situations where that would create very, very potentially steep grades between some homes if they were trying to put the 10-foot between the structures. And, that was one of the things, it was felt that, it'd be easier to, if the area did not, wasn't good for that type of spacing between the houses, it would be easier to say, well, here's the requirement with the 10 and the 5, and then if they want to apply for a variance, or where we change it to an R4 or something like that, that we're still maintaining that, in this case, in those situations, a safer type of distance between the homes, and also in terms of access and some of those kind of things. And so I guess there were, it's my feeling that, that I would tend to agree with the planning commission and what they were saying, and not sure that there's really a good enough reason to, but at any rate, that was what the discussion was.
Yeah, and then I would like to add something, but go ahead,
Well, Mayor, members of the
Administrator.
council, as was stated, we wanted to update the zoning map. And one of the things that Corey referenced was all of those shaded hatched areas. Well, those were planned development overlays or PUDs. We wanted to get away from that. So we wanted to have a uniformity and a standard that we could match. And as was stated, we've had over 1,100 units already constructed with this standard. And so we don't want to get back into the habit of doing a PUD. In all honesty, a variance isn't the right mechanism when you think about that, because you're probably are going to be hard to prove a hardship, and that wouldn't be the effective tool for a variance on a new development. And when you look at a lot of the safety issues, we addressed all of those. When we look at the actual sidewall design, the soffits related to fire, we have a number of developments have that fire code applied to very successfully. We've had no issues. We're very competitive in the market with all the other metro cities. And so I would caution making that change, because it will create a lot of legal nonconforming issues. And just the fact that we're trying to get away from a planned development overlay or PUD, I don't believe that would be the right tool.
And maybe I'm going to piggyback a little bit, because as you know, I've known Ken from Mr. Britton for many, many years, and we argue a little bit about, development standards and that. The one thing I wanted to mention, though, is and you really do have to go back even before we all sat at the council table. When you look at the early days of Cottage Grove, the side yard setbacks, the lot sizes, everything was significantly larger, right? And as we develop, and trends change, and when I say trends change, it's not even just, what the builders want, it's also what do the homeowners want. And what we're hearing, and the developers, by the way, would not build these things, to be quite frank. They wouldn't build these things if there were some people out there willing to buy them. What's happening is the families of today, or such, that are buying these facilities or these homes, they don't want these big lots anymore. They don't even want to do maintenance. They want to do a lot of HOAs and such that take care of even the yards and such. And so there is a difference. We still will have the options for the bigger lots and such within our community, but we're also going to have these opportunities for these types of homes and such to be at the 7.5 feet, which is, again, you did mention, and that was my challenge too, is like, well, we have been already doing it. That's the trend that's out there. And we as a city have been following the trend since well before any of us were on the council, and myself as mayor.
Reluctantly.
Well, but then you wouldn't be a city, because if you don't make changes to continue to move your city towards what the families that want to move into this community, then you won't grow, and you won't be able to expand your opportunities within the community for other people to join us. So that's where I look at it. It's more of a, and I've said this before, would I want to live in a house that's that close together personally? No, I don't. But there are many people that are, and they are buying those. I mean, that one particular development on the other side of the highway, I was just like, holy cow, they're popping them up there pretty quick, and they're still building them. So that's been my take on that piece. And frankly, at some point in time down the road, if trends were to change again and things got bigger, my guess is that we'll come back here another time and do another review of our ordinances similar to what we did just here, to make it sufficient to whatever the trends are going within that particular area. So I think this is more of a trend thing based on what the current individuals that are buying homes want. And that's not all of them, but the majority, that's what they're doing, and the builders are following that trend.
Thank you to everybody who answered. I'm not quite done with that question yet, though. The reason I asked is I recall when we started down the path of decreasing the setbacks to help the developers put more units on the same piece of land. And at that time, one of the concerns we had was related to specifically fire suppression and would fire jump from one home to another home, et cetera. So Jennifer, thank you for answering that. And as everybody has mentioned, we've already been approving these for several years. Now, saying that is a bit of a double-edged sword, because what you could say is, well, why would you change it if there's already a mechanism in place that has enabled us to approve these sorts of developments, even with the code as it currently stands? On the flip side, and Jennifer, again, I want to thank you for this, in order to approve those, it took an awful lot of work on the part of the staff with regard to the PUDs, which are really a pain in the butt. I mean, they're not an easy tool to use, and many cities are getting away from those. And in fact, there was a time when the state legislature was talking about eliminating PUDs as a tool for communities in Minnesota across the board. Now, that didn't pass, and I'm glad it didn't, because it's a local control issue. But I think what I'm hearing is the current setback ordinance, well, it does allow for, Jennifer, you said a variance isn't the right word, but it allows for a developer to come before staff and council to do the tighter setbacks. The current market is really leaning more towards those tighter setbacks, hence we want to evolve with the market. Is that a fairly okay summary?
Councilmember Olson, I would agree. And I think if you were to ask the development community, it adds to the affordability. When you look at what's happened in the market, in the ordinance and changes from the energy code to sustainability, to the Stormwater Act, to all of these different code and regulations that have been placed on these developers, by adding this, you actually bring affordability back to the product in one way. And so I guess I would note that there's a lot of changes that have happened than just setbacks over that same time frame.
Thank you. And to take this a little bit of a different direction, again, new code, a lot of great stuff. I mean, Corey was jumping out of her seat. She's so excited about it. How are we going to communicate this to our residents, and I guess even more specifically to our business community who may be impacted by several of these changes? Is there a rollout plan of some sort?
Mayor, members of the council, well, clearly we've been engaging already at the chamber and with our businesses over breakfast, and so we will continue to use the chamber, our networks there, but really each department that touches different elements of the code will have their own strategy. Public safety will have their own rollout program, for the credit card identification. When we look at public works or planning, each one is going to have a different way because it's not a one-size-fits-all. So we'll be rolling out each one of those in their most appropriate mechanism going forward here in January.
I appreciate hearing that, because of course there are going to be changes that get applied that some folks simply won't know about. And, there's that old saying that ignorance of the law is not really a good excuse for breaking the law. But the fact remains, as my colleague, Councilmember Dennis mentioned, this is extremely dry material. Some of us really get excited by that. I happen to like this kind of stuff, but I know other people who don't. And I'm certain that there are probably very few residents who are going to be sitting at home on a Thursday night with the fireplace on, in front of the Christmas tree, cracking the code book. I just don't think that's going to happen. So I want to make sure that we're proactive with regard to communicating. And then the last piece, speaking of proactive, it is my personal opinion that one of the biggest wins in this code update is the nuisance section. And Corey, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think one of the things that you discussed is we've made it easier and swifter for code enforcement to take place. Is that accurate?
Yes, it is. We laid out the process exactly in the code as to what will happen when there's a code enforcement violation. So city staff knows the mechanism to follow, can just follow the steps in the code. Any resident can look at it and know we followed the steps in the code, and it spells out exactly how it's supposed to play out.
And the reason I think it's such a huge win is I'm sure I'm not the only one up here at the council dais that gets phone calls, emails, et cetera, people who want to talk to you at the grocery store about a neighbor or, something that's going on in their neighborhood that they feel is a nuisance. We have a code enforcement officer in our community, and she's awesome, but she's only one person. So if I'm thinking about the application of some of these codes, specifically the nuisances, and being more proactive than reactive, because now it's essentially we deal with a complaint once we get it versus we're out looking at various neighborhoods, et cetera. It might be wise for us to think about the way in which we enforce this in a more proactive manner, to hopefully not create an environment where residents have to be so frustrated that they're gonna call the city or reach out to a council member or whatever the case might be, after it's been weeks and weeks and months of frustration. And we all have knowledge of certain neighborhoods where that tends to be the case more so than not. So, I'd like us to think about at some point, as we're looking at actually enforcing what we're going to approve here tonight, that enforcement is a more proactive approach versus a reactive approach. Hence the reason I brought up the education piece, because I see that as being proactive versus reactive. Great work, love it. I know that the time we as a council spent on this is probably a pittance compared to the time that staff spent on this, and we had lots of time that we spent on this. So thank you guys so much for all the hard work and effort. Corey, you and your team were phenomenal to work with. Again, kudos to Tammy, who came in kind of midpoint and had to get up to speed really quickly, and to the rest of the staff. Much cleaner, much easier to understand. I think it'll be much easier to enforce. But again, I think the proactive approach is the better approach. That's my 20%. Thank you.
All right. So any other council comment? Yes, Councilmember Kambata.
I would like to comment on the side yard setback issue as well.
I was actually hoping you would. Thank you.
So, in my professional capacity, I sit on a board called the Housing Affordability Task Force for the St. Paul Association of Realtors. That has given me an opportunity to be a sounding board with BATSI, which is the Building Association of the Twin Cities, and various other developers, and hear their side of, what are the challenges to affordable housing. And they've identified two that side yard setback addresses in one sweep, which is the administrative cost of the PUDs to both the cities and the developers. If you're thinking a small-time developer or a developer that doesn't have a ton of staff, they end up outsourcing these, and the cost becomes prohibitive. And they'll look at other cities where that's not a barrier to entry. So by streamlining and doing away with the PUD I mean, to the point where the reason why the state legislature almost passed that law is because the builders associations felt so strongly about that PUD being a roadblock to their meeting the needs for affordable housing that they were lobbying the state to try and circumvent cities. Thankfully, the cities won because, again, it is a local control issue, but it also highlighted the point of how serious and how the implication that it's having on affordable housing. Secondly is lot size. Land is just exponentially more expensive than it used to be. If you go to Portland or you go to other parts of the country, or even in St. Paul or St. Louis Park, you'll find what a term that is used in other parts of the country is called a low maintenance lot, 0.1 acre lot, 0.12 acres. It was the standard for a long time in development, all the way back to the turn of the century. Really, larger lots with larger setbacks were market-driven as we experienced urban sprawl post-World War II. And so that's where we saw those lot setbacks grow in width. There are many parts of St. Paul and first-ring suburbs where the minimum side yard setback is 3 feet. So you get a total of 6 feet between houses. The old joke that you could hand your neighbor a cup of milk or a cup of sugar. That's where that comes from. It's because if you were tall enough, you probably could. And that was the standard. And that was, at that time, also market-driven. And so what we're seeing is as there's downward pressure on pricing and what the market is looking for, we're seeing builders kind of come back to this. And in higher end communities, you're still seeing larger lots where the economics make sense. They're still building large lots. But there are people who, again, don't want to mow a half-acre lot or a third-acre lot, and who can't afford to, or there's a number of metrics that drive that. But in addition to that is some of the housing products that we introduced into Cottage Grove, which was one of a few cities in the entire state that had done so, are the smaller entry-level homes on the smaller lots. And that's been a wildly successful product. I'm pretty sure that they are sold out. I know so because I tried to spec one out for a client of mine, and we were told that that wasn't even an option because they were just building them assembly, basically like Warren Thompson did back in the 50s and 60s, because demand is so high, they can spec out an entire phase of that neighborhood and know that they're going to sell it. So I have to respectfully say that although I don't personally agree with the 7.5 foot setback, the market is demanding it. And if the market were to shift and demand more, we could pivot and revise this code. But I think the benefit of eliminating the PUD and helping, even though they on their own are not the singular tools that are going to improve housing affordability, they are two of the straws that are breaking the backs of builders in their attempt to build more affordable housing. And we've all identified as a board up here that is one of our objectives for our city. So I think we would be basically kind of impeding our own progress by declining to approve that.
Okay. Councilmember Wilson?
Thank you for that, Councilmember Kambata. I was really hoping you'd chime in because obviously that's the world that you live in on a daily basis, both as a property owner and as a real estate agent. One question I have for you, and if you're not prepared to answer it, you can certainly throw it at one of the staff members, is when you speak about affordability and the amount of affordable housing that communities are asked to have, is it still the case that the Met Council dictates to communities that they need to have a certain amount of what they believe to be affordable housing for potential residents in that community?
I don't know the percentage, but I do believe that the Met Council does require cities to have a certain percentage of affordable housing, and I do believe that we have struggled to meet that percentage.
So the information you presented about what the builders and developers need in order to try to stay within, some sort of parameters relative to affordable housing would apply not just here, but really to any of the metro communities that are asked to provide that sort of housing stock.
Well, one example would be, if you drive around any neighborhood that was built in the 80s, you'll notice a lot of a certain type of housing. And I think in my industry, it's the least liked, the least appreciated style of home, which is what we call a car side split level home. And that is the door in the middle, 2 windows on each side. You walk in and you immediately decide if you're going to go upstairs or downstairs. Okay, this is a very efficient floor plan and it's a very cheap home to build. You'll also notice that there were a lot of them that were built that had foundation sizes that were under 1,000 square feet, meaning the entire gross living area of that home is under 2,000 square feet. I would challenge you to find any builder with the current zoning code that is building a home with 900 square feet of finished living space, a 2-bedroom, 1-bath starter home. It's because the fixed costs of developing a lot don't make that product economically viable.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. It really helps add some color to the conversation from where I sit, and it definitely helps support the recommendation of the staff in my view. So I appreciate everybody's feedback. Thank you.
Councilmember Dennis?
Thank you, Mayor. And first off, thank you, Councilmember Kabata, for that excellent display of information and wisdom. We've had an opportunity in the past where we had a housing symposium that was done, where we invited in a number of key developers from the area. And what they made sure to share is that there's generally 4 cost factors that you have: land acquisition, land improvement, materials, and labor costs. Some of these things are controllable. Some of them are market-driven. But what we can certainly do here, and I think what we've been trying to do, is to do our part of listening to community needs and requests for more reasonable priced housing. We can do our part by following the staff recommendation on this, because I think, as was mentioned here and here, that this will make a difference relative to those 4 cost factors and how they impact to the bottom line.
Yep. Okay. All right, Councilmember Thiede?
I'll make one last comment. Obviously, the evidence is sliding away from the recommendation of the Planning Commission. And I guess when I was on the Planning Commission and so forth, back in the early 2000s, we were fighting against lot sizes widths going less than 85 feet. We denied some of those things, and actually the developer probably was happy because that was right before the market crash, but so they didn't do their development at that point. But I certainly think that we're growing very fast. Sometimes I wonder where all the people are coming from. I don't really like giving in to all the developers. There's different ways that they could get lots and different size lots and affordability. They can put. I don't think this different size in the lot really makes that much difference. They've got different choices of the maximum house size, square footage, and things like that they can put on those different lots. So I guess, it's, to me, it still would need to wait to see if how much effect that really has. I don't know if having a little bit of a slowdown in terms of the growth would be all that bad. So I'm probably going to stick with the recommendation of the Planning Commission. But
Okay. Well, and just from my comment, 2 things again. I think things have changed over the years as we have evolved as a community, so I do agree whether we're looking at it from a cost prohibitive kind of situation for affordability. What is interesting, though, when you were talking a little bit earlier about affordability, Cottage Grove actually at one particular time had more than enough affordability, but as the value of homes has went up, including those used to be affordable homes, that number has dropped pretty dramatically because of the price structures that are out there right now, including existing homes. So that has changed a bit. And then the second thing, just so I can put my 2 cents into a comment that Councilmember Olson mentioned too, and that is this new nuisance ordinance. The thing that frustrated me, as staff knows the most, in our public safety and planning and such, is when I constantly got calls from the same people, like, why isn't anything happening on this property? Why is anything, and literally, in some cases, it went for years before we were able to deal with it. And so, yes, I know you loved all the stuff in there, and staff, it's gonna make it all easier, but that, out of everything that we did, that's the big one for me, because I think it really will help all of us up here when we do get, and the citizens in general, when they get that, when we get that phone call and there's an issue within the community, that we can deal with it more quickly and succinctly. And it'll benefit, I think, our neighborhoods and actually make our neighborhoods better places to raise families, so. All right, so council, we actually have 3 separate motions.
Mayor, I'll move to adopt ordinance repealing and replacing the Cottage Grove official zoning map.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion by Councilmember Olson, second by Councilmember Thiede, excuse me. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. We have number 2.
Mayor, I'll move that we adopt ordinance repealing and replacing the Cottage Grove City Code.
All right, so we have a motion by Councilmember Olson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Dennis. Any other discussion? Seeing
I
none.
do have one other comment that I do want to
Yeah,
make.
Councilmember Thiede.
For the record, that I agree with like 95% of what you guys have done. It's a fantastic job. It's taken a lot of work. Very good job. I just feel that this, I'd rather see this zoning stay the same and change it, you know, if need be, if it really does affect anything. But, so it doesn't seem to have affected things up to this point, but, so.
Okay. Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed?
Nay.
Okay, 4-1 on that one. And then the last one, if we would like to make that motion.
I'll motion to adopt ordinance amending the city fee table.
All right, so we have a motion by Councilmember Kambata. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Dennis. Again, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. You good now? There you go. All right, thank you, and thanks again to our staff. Thank you, Corey, and to your team out there and council for managing through this for the last literally couple of years. All right, next item under regular agenda is commissions and committee appointments. So as the public may or may not know, every year the mayor is given the duty, if you will, to assign commissions and liaisons and such within the different committees and advisory commissions that we have within the city. And so I once again put those my choices for the different committees out there for 2023. And just for the public, I'll just read through them real quick, just so the public is aware. So as Mayor Pro Tem would be Councilmember Dennis. The Economic Development Authority would be myself as the president and Councilmember Dennis. Historic Preservation Advisory Committee will be Councilmember Thiede. Planning Commission will be Councilmember Kambata. The Parks, Recreation, and Natural Resources Commission will be Councilmember Kambata. The Public Services Commission will be Councilmember Olson. Mr. Strawberry Festival next to me here will be Councilmember Thiede. The Investment Committee will be Councilmember Dennis and Councilmember Kambata. The Red Rock Corridor Commission will be Councilmember Thiede. The South Washington County Telecommunications Commission will be Councilmember Olson. The South Washington County Watershed District will be Councilmember Olson. I'll continue on as the Holiday Train Committee member. Beyond the Yellow Ribbon is pretty much staying the same because it's the same people that have been on it for quite a while too. And that is Councilmember Dennis and Councilmember Olson. The Great River Rail Commission will be Councilmember Thiede. East Metro Strong will be Councilmember Thiede. The Cottage Grove Chamber of Commerce will be Councilmember Kambata. And the Cottage Grove Convention and Visitors Bureau will remain as Councilmember Dennis and Councilmember Olson. So I just wanted to share that with the public so that they're aware. And if everybody is good with that, I'm going to go ahead and ask for a motion in a second.
Move to approve.
Nope.
I'll second.
Okay, so I've got a motion by Councilmember Olson, a second by Councilmember Kambata. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, so next is 12 is council comments or requests. We'll start at the other end here with Councilmember Kambata.
Thank you, Mayor Bailey. You know, this is our last meeting of the year. And as I look back on the year, I just have to commend staff and all the volunteers who helped put together some really amazing events this year, from Strawberry Festival to Holiday Train to all of the volunteerism. And, I mean, even revising code. There's a lot of dedicated people that make this city operate the way it does, and it really is a grassroots effort. And so I just wanted to personally thank everyone for all their hard work this year.
Fantastic, thank you. Councilmember Dennis.
Thank you, Mayor. I also agree with Councilmember Kambata. A lot of great work done here by our staff team, volunteers, commission members. You know, it hasn't been the easiest of years to go through, but I think we've posted a tremendous amount of accomplishment as a team of individuals working on behalf of the community. So that's number one. Number two, I want to wish everyone a very safe and happy holiday time period and healthy time as well. As we know, there's still some challenges with things going on with, you know, flu and COVID and other weird things going on. The mayor's got his mask on right now. But definitely my very best on behalf of myself and my family to everyone. And then last but not least, I wanted to just take a moment to recognize a gentleman at the end of the dais, Mr. Justin Olson. Hi.
Hi.
So.
Did you not know who I was? That you know?
No, I do, but you were busy writing down your thoughts there, I could see. So I just wanted to make a quick mention of how grateful I am and appreciative of all of the volunteer work that you have done on behalf of the community in a very wide array of different, you know, opportunities and organizations. Things you do with the Lions Club, things you do with Beyond the Yellow Ribbon. You know, the work that you've done with Discover Cottage Grove and out ringing the bell for Salvation Army and just all these amazing things. So you've done a tremendous amount. I know everybody does some things up here, but this year you took the cake. And so thank you on behalf of the council and the entire community.
Well, that's very kind of you. Thank you very much. I do it because I love my community and I want to give back. The community has given me far more than I will ever be able to give back in my lifetime, but it's certainly a labor of love. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, Councilmember Thiede.
Okay, speaking of Strawberry Fest, there is the logo. We're requesting ideas for the logo and the theme. If you go out on Facebook and go to Cottage Grove Strawberry Fest, we actually have pictures of the previous years, the buttons and the themes and so forth. So if you got that creative vein in you, even if you don't, go out there and take a look. And if you got a great idea, by all means, go ahead and submit it to us, because we'd love to see some good ideas. So so appreciate that. And also, you know, happy holidays to everybody. I mean, one of the things that you've seen, I've said often, I think one of the greatest accomplishments we've had, besides being a council that usually always, you know, agrees with each other, and sometimes we don't agree, but we still work things out. But is that I think one of the greatest accomplishments we've had over the last few years is just the staff and just the environment that has been created in the city of Cottage Grove and and the employees. And, you know, and when I first got on council 12 years ago, it was a totally different environment. You know, you'd have, people, talking about these people, or complaining about this, or complaining about that, or things like that. But I think it truly, if you took a close enough look, you'd find that people definitely respect each other. They're not looking at somebody else thinking, well, geez, competition, or they're gonna, throw me under the bus, or just things like that. So it's a working environment that is really developed, that really has gone from the good to great in my belief. And we just need to keep it up, and I think we can, and it's a fantastic place to live, work, and play.
There you go. Thank you. Councilmember Olson.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a few things here. First of all, it's no surprise that we are in the middle of winter in Minnesota, although I think today was officially the last day of fall. Is that right? Certainly didn't feel fall-like when I came to the meeting this evening, but we have to all recognize the tremendous work that our Public Works Department does when they are out dealing with snow events and making sure that the sidewalks are safe and the roads are safe, et cetera. We have got an unbelievably proud group of folks who serve in Public Works, and that pride is really evident in the work that they do, making sure roads are clean for our public safety folks to be able to respond to emergencies, for our residents to be able to get around town. And when I say clean, I mean you can see the pavement and it's from curb to curb. They make sure the sidewalks are cleaned up and safe so that people can enjoy, even in the winter months, getting out and taking the dog for a walk or taking a walk around town with their kids, finding their way to a local park to maybe go sledding and have some fun with the family. So Ryan, I would just ask, please let your team know how absolutely grateful we are for all the hard work that they do, and especially this time of year when you're around the holiday season. They're out at 2, 3 in the morning away from their families. They work, an 8, 10-hour shift. They go home and take a nap. They come back and they work again. And you've had a lot of snow this year already. I mean, quite a bit more than last year. So please pass that along. I also want to thank the residents of the city of Cottage Grove for letting me be a city council member in the city. This is a job that I never get tired of, that I really appreciate and enjoy. I really like the work, and I love the people that I work with, whether it's my council colleagues. Even when we disagree, we disagree without being disagreeable. We respect and like each other, and the staff and everybody that volunteers around town that works with us on different events. It is really a joy to sit in this chair, and that doesn't happen unless you get enough votes at the ballot box whenever it is your turn to run. And so truly the residents of this city need to hear how grateful I am and how much I appreciate this opportunity. I know it's not a forever opportunity, but it's a wonderful opportunity, and I could not be more grateful for the chance to work with so many amazing people, and hopefully, make this city a little better by the time I'm done than it was when I started. Thank you to my council colleague, Steve Dennis. I had no idea what you were recognizing, so I appreciate that. But, this whole community is built on the power of volunteerism. It really is. And there are many, many, many people out there who put in so much time, energy, and effort into our community. And I could spend a month of Sundays giving you a list of names. But let's just talk about the fact that when there's a need in the city, that need gets filled, whether it's from the Lions, from the VFW, from the Beyond the Yellow Ribbon team that Steve and I are part of, all these various nonprofit groups, the YSB, which, the mayor is part of that. There are people out there who struggle. It's just the way of the world. And there are people who are struggling right now. But when that struggle becomes something that we're aware of, as a community, we step up. And a good example of that is the holiday train. We had a really great holiday train event, and I'm not going to steal the mayor's thunder because I know he's going to talk about it because it's like his favorite thing in the world. You think Corey was excited. You just wait till the mayor starts talking about the holiday train. We don't call him Merry Christmas for nothing. But I want to just give a quick note. I stopped by Friends in Need Food Shelf yesterday, and I spoke to Michelle Regath, who's the director of the food shelf. And I don't want to get this wrong, so Pete, I know you're part of the Holiday Train Committee, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the goal this year was in the $90,000 range? Yep. Okay. We're currently sitting at $162,000 raised for the holiday train this year. And that was yesterday. So Michelle told me yesterday there's more money coming. Pete, do you have an updated number? Do you know what it is?
Yeah, as of yesterday afternoon, 169,500, so.
$169,500 raised by this community for people in need. If that doesn't tell you that we are, as our former county commissioner Myra Peterson used to say, the heart of Washington County, I don't know what does. So I wish everybody happy holidays. From my family to yours, I hope it's healthy. I hope you get to enjoy some quality time with your family. And just know that we all appreciate the fact that we have such a wonderful community to work in. And if you're struggling with something, please reach out. This time of year can be tough for some people, but there are people who are out there willing to help. And that's what we do. So thank you again. Mayor, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. And, you mentioned that, so that was the updated number. We're almost at 170,000 for the holiday train. So, amazing, absolutely amazing outpouring of support. The number of people, I had the honor of being able to ride on the train into Cottage Grove and to see all the people literally lined up, and it blew them away too. They said of all the stops that they've been doing, Cottage Grove completely blows everybody else away with the number of people that turn out for it and the amount of money we raise. I even know that in hearing at a city to the south of us, they were definitely celebrating $48,000 of donations to their area. And you're hearing we're nearing 170. And what you also didn't hear, because I was chatting with one of our committee members, Randy Bachman, here in Cottage Grove, and him and his Merchants Bank kind of do a thing called 10 Days of Giving. And what it is there's like he kind of, if you want, you could say you kind of pit elementary schools where they ask the elementary school kids to bring paper products in, and then, whoever gets to be the champion the most. And he said for year after year after year, it's always been it's always been Pine Hill, I believe, elementary that has come in with the most paper products and such. And in this year, it was very close, but it was actually Armstrong, and which was pretty cool. But what he
Pete,
did,
you're a rocket, aren't you? Oh, yeah. All right.
well, and
pride.
what he shared with me was, again, other banks for merchants and other communities do these drives, and he was, and believe me, everybody gets to do what they do, but I want to tout this community again. I want to tout Randy and the efforts he did. The other one, he was showing me a picture where they had a little, they were all excited, and they were sending pictures into their corporate office of one of those like Hertz trucks that had, small ones though, that had all the stuff in it. And they were all excited about that, which was awesome, right? Randy was showing me the 3 semi-loads of product that were delivered to the Friends in Need food shelf from the Cottage Grove and surrounding areas, and blew everybody away from the executives and such at Merchants Bank. So it does go to the testament about this community being very much in a giving sense, no matter what the process is or the issue is. But again, kudos to the Holiday Train Committee. Thank you to CP Rail. That's really what gets this going, is all their focus and love for the communities. And I had, again, the opportunity to chat with them, and who knows, maybe in a year coming very near you, there could be something major, because they're about to celebrate their 25th anniversary. So that would be pretty neat to see. The other item I just wanted to mention, and It's still not 100% over the goal line yet, but I keep getting congratulatory calls that, as we were talking about earlier about, grants and that, and the city working for grants and such, one of the other things that we've been doing as a city is we've been actually working with our federal and state legislators to try to ascertain or get additional funding for projects that we need, infrastructure and such within Cottage Grove. Earlier on, and obviously it hasn't been built yet, but we did receive $3 million for what will be a future road project and infrastructure improvements on what's called the shops at Cottage View. And what we did get a call both by our representative, Angie Craig, and then also Senator Klobuchar, is that in the current bonding bill that is making its way through the House and the Senate and will go to the President, there is $5 million in there that we had asked for to help us take care of 80th Street. And what we want to do with 80th Street is finish from Highway 61 all the way up to Ideal, which is the only part that's left to be done. And so instead of, again, we go to the taxpayers locally here and say, hey, can you help us? We raised your taxes to do this. It's federal money that is going to be coming in to help fund that project. So what that also does, though, for us is it helps us maybe move some funds to other, pavement management or other projects that are within our community. So I want to thank our representatives, specifically, nothing against our senators, Tina Smith or Amy Klobuchar, but it really was Angie Craig, who really was spearheading this to help us with those projects. So I did have a chance to chat with her earlier this week. And then lastly, at our last council meeting, we did have a closed session, and by law, I guess I better say law, we also, what I have to do is come back at the next meeting and just share with the public that the closed session that we had at the last meeting was to do a performance review on our city administrator. And if you already haven't heard all the glowing things about our staff and everything that you've heard tonight, I guess I can share with you that particular performance review went very, very well. And we're very happy with the performance of our administrator, and the council was unanimous on that with the support that we have for her and the work that she is doing with all the staff on behalf of the citizens of Cottage Grove. So I just wanted to mention that because I need to make everybody aware that's what the review was, or that she had a review, and that the review was a very good review. So with that, council, the next item on our agenda is a workshop which is open to the public. This particular workshop is to have a discussion about what they call local option sales tax, and that is something that we'll be getting back more into the public about later. We're looking at some different options or opportunities for funding parks and new parks and such. So we're going to be having a workshop about that. And then we do not have a workshop this evening that's closed to the public, which is 14. So we won't be adjourning in here. But I think I can say, because everybody else did here, on behalf of myself and the rest of the council up here and all of our city staff, have a very Merry Christmas and a very prosperous New Year. And we'll see you all in January. Thank you.